Thanks. I'm glad to follow Randy and appreciate the work he's doing in the legislature. My name is Pat McGuigan. I'm the editor of a small midtown weekly called the City Sentinel.
Hello.
I'm the author of 2 books and the editor of 7. And I think the reason I'm here is this old book back in the 1980s, The Politics of Direct Democracy. And I use the term direct democracy advisedly. The federal Constitution guarantees, if everything works right, the federal Constitution guarantees to every state a Republican form of government. That same Constitution and the Constitution of the founding states, and you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Waters, but I think of the 13 original colonies, 12 of the states used popular referendum to confirm their state constitutions. A little bit of this stream of consciousness, I throw a bunch of stuff out. Do you know if yet there is in a single place a compilation of all the initiative language of the states and anything that affects direct democracy?
As far as the language of the laws?
Yeah, the language of the constitutions.
Yeah.
In one place? Okay. Here's why I ask. In the argument over separation of church, so-called separation of church and state, in the argument about the role of religion in public life and so forth, the advocates of traditional morality and of a healthy degree of religious involvement in public life are able to readily and quickly deploy that language, which is a very good counterpoint to the misuse of Jefferson's letter, which was only a letter. It wasn't a constitutional provision, it wasn't a law anywhere, but a letter to a friend where he talked about a wall of separation between church and state, and that only became the law of the land operatively as a result of a Supreme Court decision, I guess, in the 50s. But in any case, one of the things that we need to do as people concerned about the exercise of the process and keeping it robust for the sake of our republic, whether we call it the initiative and referendum process or direct democracy, is to have readily available those kinds of tools that go all the way back to the founding of the country, and that in fact are rooted in the Judeo-Christian tradition and in the Enlightenment, the uniquely American fusion of all those elements. So I'll throw that out as something that the academics can do. Now I got to tell you, all through the 1980s, there's a guy named David McGuigan at Brigham Young University, who was kind of anti-initiative but a good academic. A guy named Tom Cronin, who did a book in the late 1980s called Direct Democracy, that I helped with quite a bit by reviewing the manuscript, and I got a blurb on the back of the book. And myself, there were 3 of us that were kind of the initiative and referendum, direct democracy, whatever term we want to use, gurus. And I remember one time, I think it was only once, that we had more people on the panel than we had in the room. There were 4 or 5 of us discussing aspects of the previous year's most interesting stuff in direct democracy. This was at a meeting of the American Political Science Association. So to come to a room like this and be able to talk about this process I've worried about and thought about and written about since 1980 is kind of thrilling. Throw a bunch of things out. When I was deeply involved every single day in monitoring this process, doing a newsletter and this book, the success rate for ballot measures, ballot initiatives, was about 1/3. It was 33%, and that was slightly higher than the historic average. Well now, with the volume somewhat higher in the resort to the initiative, the success ratio is 40%. Now I actually think that that's a sign of dysfunction in our system, because the more effort that is made, this all knits together, the more effort that is made to suppress the use of the ballot initiative and other forms of direct access to the voters, the more there is an equal and opposite reaction. And the reaction is people try harder and try more. And the reaction, unfortunately, to that is in some cases government and its elements, including the judiciary, respond more and more inappropriately in an effort to suppress that reaction. So the way we want a vibrant, robust process of direct democracy in a system where people trust our government and trust the elements of government. The only problem with pre-election or pre-certification review of ballot initiatives is, can you trust the people doing the process? Like one of the functions of attorneys general, this has been an issue forever, it's usually AGs, in some states it's somebody else, but they write a neutral, short form ballot description. If we can't trust that, how can we trust what we're voting on? That typically, you know, we're all busy, and a dutiful voter will at least read that one paragraph and decide how they're going to vote. It better be a fair summary of what's before you so you can vote yes or no knowledgeably. Well, my problem with Drew Edmondson's behavior in this matter is not that Drew Edmondson is a Democrat and I'm a Republican, not that Drew Edmondson is moderately liberal and I'm pretty conservative. My problem is that Drew Edmondson's actions undermine trust in the neutrality of the government itself vis-a-vis political actors. Now, let me give you an example. Here, I am a journalist, a reporter, and the little newspaper that I work at and run now, have run for a few weeks. I'm a conservative. My audience is probably 55 to 65% liberal, and the rest are conservative. Now that is the reverse of what's the case in most of the country. In most markets, the reporter or journalist or editor is considerably to the left of their audience. In this case, I'm to the right of my audience. However, we have a pretty good base of readers. Week in and week out, we're fair to everybody, from the gay rights people to their opponents and everybody in between, the liberals, the conservatives, the Democrats, the Republicans, and people read the paper. Because we try to model, doesn't mean we always succeed, but we try to model that neutrality and give everybody a shot at getting in the paper. Well, what Drew's done is aimed at pre-certification suppression of a particular type of speech. My only argument with Charlie would be that the initiative and referendum, get this, is closer to the founding purpose of the country. Why do you think courts again and again are less restrictive of the application of political money and vigorous speech in ballot campaigns than they are in candidate campaigns? Because initiative campaigns are core political speech. So they have to be more robustly protected. And so in some regards, we don't want, in that regard at least, we certainly don't want regulation of the initiative becoming similar to the way that speech is regulated in the political process. George Will warned what would happen, and we just saw it. We saw McCain play by the rules, and Obama turn his back on the rules he had promised to adhere to when it came to political contributions. So the only thing I can say about that, and this does relate, is that I hope President-elect Obama will stick to his commitments on transparency, in contrast to the way he behaved on this other subject. We'll see. I say that without anger or rancor. It's an expectation, and I don't know which way it'll go. Okay, very quickly. That point of neutrality, let me go back a little bit of my own history. My other book as an author is called Ninth Justice, The Fight for Bork. And at the very early in the book, there's an incident that ties into all of this. It was a woman, a lesbian feminist, pretty friendly with her, even though we were completely different politically. And on the day, her name's Nan Aaron, it's no secret, Alliance for Justice. On the day that Robert Bork was nominated, or it might have been the day that Powell resigned, I don't remember. She and I were on a national television program opposite each other, and she grew more and more emotional and strident as the show went on. I get kind of emotional remembering this. And at the end of her stridency, I said, Nan, and this was when we were off the air, I said, Nan, aren't you concerned? Because don't you